G'day punters, welcome back to the Punters Academy, episode 9 I believe we're up to for the year, and John Walter from racinghorse.com.au. G'day John, how are you?
Good mate, challenging week, more challenging for you considering you're the data man that's trying to put it all together, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, so we had Rosehill Saturday, which was probably the wettest track we've seen in Sydney for several years. The race one time came out a heavy 9. We then got to the 2-year-old race where they ran it in heavy rain. It raced like a bog, 12.6 on our scale, and then race 3, 11.6, slightly better over the 2,000 metres, but obviously the meeting was called off after that. Look, we've had a situation with those 2-year-olds recently, back in February, where we had 2 races at Randwick that ran atrocious times, atrocious sectionals, yet the form lines coming out of that She's Extreme and Fireburn form line has proved to be the best form line. So, you know, you've just got to, I suppose, treat those types of races in isolation, and you can't literally just take whatever the clock says and interpret it as
really weird fact. Too that they've run quite fast early time and then just really, like, obviously they're going to have to slow down, but all seem to be like fast tempos considering how wet and everything it was. It's but yeah, very difficult to line them up, no doubt.
Indeed. So we'll start reviewing the Rosehill meeting, John. Race 1 there. Look, Tancred won the race. Do you want to bring up the video?
Let's do that. Share screen.
Let's do that. You know, a few horses here that were well supported, including the winner, 9-1 in the 13-2. It looks like it's run a new personal best, Tancred. Margie B led. It's pulled up slow to recover. 2 up was a bit slow out, and as was Holy Rain. Funny sort of race. Not sure what to make of this.
No, I know he's just such a good trainer, this fella. He's a sneaky good trainer, Parker. He obviously, like, it smelt that this horse, I think it only had 1 trial. No trial, or no public trial. Must have had a few jump outs, but probably easy to determine best horse in the race, top weight, whatever, but very unlikely that it'd be ready to go on Saturday. And he obviously, you know, the betting suggests had this horse closer to the mark, nice aggressive ride into the box seat, and just sort of outclassed him. But I definitely don't know what to do going forward. Dalalart was very easy late and raced accordingly, and the rest are all pretty much, maybe Margie B was only first up. You could be forgiving of her, but the rest are all pack chasers.
Yeah, look, the pace was actually pretty solid early too in this race, which sort of, I suppose, put a bit of spread into the field. In terms of the inside lanes in the straight, they weren't much good. I mean, it appeared that Tancred there rolled back towards the inside, but rails and run was okay, but in the straight, the rail wasn't really the place to be, although we've only got those 3 races to sort of.
And it probably, if it was okay, this was the race, right, that it was obviously most likely to be at its best.
Indeed. Okay.
Just completely outclassed him, right? That's about it.
I think that's all you can say about the race. Race 2, the 2-year-old race, as we said, heavy rain here, fast tempo. Look, a bit weird in some aspects. Boyfriend, you know, hung out badly and then sort of ran off the track and was eased down. It was pretty easy in the betting. A bit of support there for Bez Marty. Jay McDonald said it wasn't suited by the conditions. And Yankee Hustle, I mean, it was pretty much a situation where it just over-raced pretty badly, and Peace Office had never travelled on the ground either. I'm not sure what to make of these 2-year-olds going forward. Have you got an opinion?
We made the comment before of that She's Extreme race that a lot of, like, these 2-year-olds, they've seen wet tracks over the last few weeks, but a lot of them certainly would never have seen conditions like this. And when you've got Nash Rawiller coming out and saying that he's never been more scared in a race, what is a you know, inexperienced 2-year-old going to do when they're slipping and sliding on a surface like this, and what's going to do to their confidence? Yeah, you can only think it's a negative for most horses. And like you say, there's Boyfriend getting pulled out of the race. A lot of these horses well beaten prior to the turn, like they're not even taking part. So, far out. Good luck trying to line it. Trying to line this form up.
Put the pen through the race.
The second horse was a good effort, and the winner was, you know, nice and solid. They've beaten the rest easily, so you can't knock their efforts. But it's trying to line them up going forward. That's the hard part.
I that's the way I'm taking it, is just put a line through it and try and assess it differently when they next appear. Certainly be cautious either way. Moving on to the Neville Sellwood, the 2,000 metre last race at Rosehill Saturday. Looked fast tempo early, solid probably by the time they got to the 600. I was very fortunate here that W. Pike put T. Berry in a nice little pocket there, turning for home, which probably won me the race with Mount Popper, because I was heavily against Polly Gray. Just a couple of things I didn't like in its profile. It was well supported on a course, though, and Mount Popper easy, and it got out to a good price, and that's why I've ended up backing it. But yeah, I was lucky to get away with this race, I thought.
Interesting betting move from that. Like, I liked Polly Gray last start. I think you liked it as a value sort of hope too, and it was so bad in that Coolmore off the 7-day backup. Then obviously up in distance, you would suggest this is open class up in distance. It's on paper a class drop, but not an easy one, and it did drop in weight heavily coming back against these horses. It was a really confident betting move, is what I'm suggesting off a really weird poor performance. So maybe there was more to that, but they were right. But as you say, you got the money. That's the main thing, right?
I got the luck. Mount Popper's pretty much gone as good as it can go too in terms of a rating sense.
I was actually surprised it wasn't more heavily backed with the prevailing conditions and the fitness profile and everything, and just perfect setup. I thought it'd start quite short, so it was surprising to me that the money sort of more came for Polly Gray, but they were both probably right in the end. It's pretty dominant, the two of them.
They were the two. Spirit Ridge pulled up slow to recover, also lost an Air4 plate and running, so I suppose that's a forgive. And Moneygall sort of didn't seem to handle the conditions of this race as well as it did its prior start where it won. I don't think there's much.
This fella, I'm not sure what to make of Skylab. Whether I was sort of asked the question whether I thought he was a miler more than a 2,000 metre horse, and last start he jumped quickly in distance, and you had to sort of be forgiving of him. Whereas here he gets into the race cheap enough, and he's pretty weak late. It might suggest that back in distance maybe his go, because he's going well enough to win a race. He's right there to the 200 or 300, but he's just not finishing his races off up at this distance range. So maybe back in trip for Skylab.
Well, he's in Saturday, I think, isn't he? Over the mile, so on the 7-day backup. So who knows?
In a Doncaster, is he?
Yeah, I think it's the Doncaster, isn't it? Yeah.
I haven't seen the field, so that's that's actually interesting. He'll be huge odds in a Doncaster, and he's a good horse. I think he's probably going to be underestimated in a race like that. But yeah.
Okay, moving on to Newcastle, and this is something else you want to say about that race?
No, that's cool. I'm good.
So we started off with the handicap in a race one there over 1,400 metres. Solid tempo set here.
What did you think of the track?
Look, I sort of went into it thinking, well, they'd raced on the Saturday and they might start getting off to the inside and sort of coming down the middle. So it seemed to be that. The inside was certainly not as good in the straight. It helped my best bet of the day, It helped it, I think. And I'm glad, from the point of view of the transfer, and it's heavily backed and started 11-8 favourite, and did the job very impressively. But look, I didn't really have any problems with the track.
No problems. It was weird. Like I did listen to the curator, and he basically, I don't think he was too happy to receive the meeting, as in, the track's copped quite a bit of wear lately, and I think he just threw it in the rail true and left it to their own devices, if that makes sense. Like I think if it was a target meeting, he would have put the rail out 10 metres or something like that, and the track probably would have looked better to the eye. It didn't look good when they were steering 10 off or whatever they do here in the first race of the day. But I think the track was fine too. They all had their chance to get to this part of the track, and it was a good surface.
I mean, what's wrong with leaving the rail true and letting the jockeys work it out? I mean, there's an argument.
Exactly. It's just not the norm, is it? It's not the norm, and like a big open track like Newcastle, especially, and you could probably argue that the tighter tracks probably pay more of a price when they move the rail right. But
interesting coincidence there at the start of the race, John, with Bowman on rustic steel, made some contact with another horse, and then sort of steadied and grabbed hold.
Especially after Leeds basically came out and said they were going to be negative anyway, but maybe that helps with any questions asked, that little bump that he's copped there. But it was an interesting one leading into the race, obviously, that cops a penalty going into a big race in a couple of weeks, and they were very negative at every opportunity when talking about its chances, yet the betting was not. It did look very well placed. It looked like it had found a nice position in the run potentially, and it was easy to like on exposed form, but knowing that maybe it's grand finals in a couple of weeks here and you can see how keen it is. It did get worked up before the start. So I think they were right in the way they handled it at the stable. They were negative at every post about its chances and what they were hoping to see today. But, it was a weird one, right? I just wish those races would race penalty-free. So, from a perspective of lead-up runs, because otherwise you get situations like this.
Well, I suppose that people ask questions, don't they?
They do, and naturally, and it just takes away a bit of a grey area that you don't want horses having barrier trials in races, and I'm not saying that's what they did, but it's certainly easy to come to that sort of ideal in your own mind, isn't it? That there's a big chance that the horse may not be at its best or trying its hardest with the target in 2 weeks, where it could be penalised here. So it's just something that you would, that doesn't make much difference, does it? It's just a change to the race conditions. And whatever you qualify at, that's what you race at on final day. It makes sense.
Yeah, just looking at Taxu too throughout the run, it sort of just wanted to hang out the whole way, didn't it? And maybe that made a difference to it. In terms of Mar and Par, it was expecting the betting 16-1 and the 10-1. Ended up easing that horse down over the last furlong. It's got a trial now, according to the steward, so it'll be interesting to see.
I don't know what to do with the winner. It's hard to knock its performance. It sits outside of a solid tempo and puts the race away. The other horse was giving fitness to it, and then he was giving fitness to it, and he's won the race quite well.
Fast time
for a long time,
fast time for a 7 furlong race at Newcastle, but then again, these are metropolitan standard horses, I suppose. Sorry, we were in the wrong race, aren't we?
What's that?
I just said 1,400 metres at Newcastle.
That is 1,400 at Newcastle.
It is 1,400. Yeah, that's right.
No, you're right.
Sorry,
you're right.
I'm not going mad yet.
No, it's very difficult to bloody. It's just a crazy sort of setting. And yeah, you mentioned that to me too. That the times are, well, number one, we don't have your finalised times, and number two, that there's not too many metropolitan meetings run at Newcastle, especially of this standard.
Yeah, so then naturally you'd expect them to run faster time against track and distance standards. Okay, yes. Moving on to the Italic Stakes there. Race 2 over the improved distance of 1850. We'll talk about that later, I suppose. Average tempo. Here, look, the race sort of worked out well enough for me with Character and Sword Point, my main two plays. So I was pleased to see Character get the job done. What do you think here, John? Anything of note?
Yeah, not much happened, and obviously probably mainly these horses are going to the Derby on Saturday, a few of them. And from my perspective, nothing really did a lot to suggest that they're Derby quality horses, and that's probably the number one thing. Maybe the horse of the New Zealand horse, what's it called? Is it White Noise or is it Regal Line? I can't remember which one's which. It's White Noise, isn't it? I mean, no, it's Regal Line coming down the outside. It looks like a one-pace horse that'll be suited to 2,400 metres if there is one out of the race. These guys all look like they're pretty much gassed to me. I can't see many of them running a strong 2,400 on a testing track, and the two coming home, Benno and Regal Line, probably look the two that'll be suited out in distance. But it's a pretty steady race.
So the stewards asked valid questions about his right on Benno in terms of the vigour he applied over the last furlong. I suppose looking at it did look a little bit soft to the eye.
Yeah, he's soft out of the gates. He definitely doesn't look in a hurry to track up. Doesn't look good, does it?
Well, you can understand why I ask questions.
Well, if you backed it for a place, you'd be suicidal. Even the last 2 strides when he looks like he's a chance of running into third, he sort of raises his hands. It's a bit plain, but I'm not saying it would have won the race, but you've got a reason to be angry if you backed it for a place.
Paterna was beaten the length of the straight, pulled up the cardiac arrhythmia, started in the market, so obviously you forgive there. And Brave Boy, from the 600 on, they eased it down over the concluding stages, thinking something was amiss. So maybe some forgives there.
Maybe some forgives.
Moving on to the Emancipation. 1,500 metres, below average tempo here. I think they actually went too slow. That was my read of the race afterwards. I got it wrong. I was against Promise to Success at the odds early. Look, it did get out a bit, I think. So, but still, no good for me. I backed Anavisto and had something on Nimali as well. So the race, I think, was run too slowly. If you look at the closing stages, we'll get there, but horses like Kiku and Promise to Success were able to get home, and I think they were able to make cheap ground in that midsection there. So
I was the opposite. I got it wrong, but I got the result right. I thought they'd go really hard, which would suit Promise to Success and Promi Nimali, and that Anavisto would have to sort of work. I didn't think that Vangelic would possibly give up that outside leader position, and
just wanted the race really keen, Anavisto, I think, and maybe that's because it went too slowly. Expat pulled up lane 2 out of 5 and is now going for a spell.
Yeah, and it was a horse that probably needs to roll to have any hope as well. It was very strange tactics. I agree with the on paces, and I think Tim's grabbed hold thinking they're going to go quick, and they didn't, which probably didn't help him either on Vangelic. And then you look at them all, Keen getting to the bend, and then the one horse with a nice turn of foot. It's not dominant, is it? Like, nothing is going to be dominant when they go this slow. It's just it's a bit of another race where you got to sort of wash your hands of it because it's such a ugly run affair. Yeah,
I think so. Doncaster Prelude, next race here. Mr. Mozart got the job done, bless its heart, and I thought Cucaracha's run was pretty good, pretty soft on it. Brutality sort of was towards the inside for memory in the home straight. Or the inside section of those that were racing there, and it's obviously aiming to peak on the weekend as well. Imaging was supported 4-1 into 7-2. It's got a trial now to the satisfaction of the stewards. It was a 4
It was disappointing for sure.
Yeah.
And you can see he sort of wants to get his head side on. He's laying out and doing some funny things. He might have just been really fresh or something. His performance probably too bad to be true, but solid all like this. It's a solid win, this.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I liked it I liked it last day as well, and particularly was impressed with the figures that it ran and the way it did it. And I would have found I thought that it would be better.
Well, here you think you're in trouble, right?
Yeah, with our Playboy looming up.
And late, he's holding, and like what you said, it's funny with these slow tempos. Last start, he felt like he ran good time and ran good sections and sort of ran away from Gay's horse a little bit late there after getting a soft lead. And I think it's a good example of how sometimes slow tempos can hide how good a horse has actually gone. And here, how strong he is here, you think he might be a little bit vulnerable this time after getting it soft last time, but he's, again, the strongest on the line. So, it's easy to sometimes overlook. Leaders in slow tempo races, you want to be against them, but sometimes they're the ones that were most affected by slow tempo. So, like you said, Anavisto in the last race, another horse, it's a good example. It can play against the leaders sometimes, and he's just super strong here through the line. It's going really well, this horse.
Yeah, Cucaracha coming from the back there, down the outside of the Blue Cat too from their last, I thought was a good run.
Barry Trial for sure, or not Barry Trial, a good lead-up run too. Longer, I don't think any of these other horses are doing too much. It's sort of the one that's on the up, and Brutality having another little sniff around for this week when the blinkers go on, but I'm not sure that he's absolutely flying either.
I think he's going as well as he was prior to the Villiers. I thought those lead-up runs to the Villiers were crackers, and it was a great opportunity at the time. Okay, let's go on to the Tancred now, where we saw Douay demolish this field, coming from
Strange tactics here, I thought, as well, and strange betting.
Yeah, look, I thought it might have even started short. I mean, it would have started 11-8.
Well, what did you have Spanish Mission roughly?
I was against it a bit. I had it at 9-1. So I wasn't saying it couldn't win, but I took a set against it because there was a couple of things in its profile I didn't like, and I know from our show the other day on Thursday, Jason was very much against it. Excuse me, as well. Look, I had the winner odds on marked 4-5, so perhaps I was a little bit too kind to it. This horse is just flying. I mean, it's been really good for me the last couple of starts now, this horse. So I think
he rode it really well. I thought he could have easily fallen for the 3-card trick here and tried to track up on the back of Stockman. Probably wins anyway, but I thought he played perfectly into the horse's hands to just allow it to travel as much as possible and use its turn of foot. Maybe I could have won on it the way it went, but like I say, she's the only horse in the race with the turn of foot, and she just looks. You could argue that if you went back and said that she had the run that She's Ideal had, or that Very Elegant had 3 starts ago, she would have won just as convincingly as this sort of thing. Yeah, she looks like the dominant weight for age horse in the country.
Yeah, that was the Chipping Norton, wasn't it?
The Chipping Norton or the Winx, or I don't know, what do they call it now? I don't know, whatever they call it, but the 1,500 metre, where she was backing on the inside there. Her only, and her run first up was good, but since then she could have easily been dominant 3 starts in a row at weight for age.
Yeah, she could have been.
And it's hard to see, maybe Animo, I don't know, is the only horse that could scare her. I know it's unlikely she goes to Queen Elizabeth, but yeah.
Well, assuming she goes to the Sydney Cup, gets in with the lightweight, she'd be a short price favourite in that.
Yeah, and she'll be fairly short in the other race, I'm sure, even with Animo and Very Elegant lining up too. But I'd prefer to see her there as a racing fan, but unlikely.
Okay, Vinery Stakes, below average tempo here, and we saw Fangirl and Hinge dominate the stablemates. I was on Hinge. I saved the winner, but my main bet was Hinge. I was against Gypsy Goddess off its Queensland form. I didn't have the figures as strong as some people might have had them. Never Been Kissed had every possible chance there and got things to suit. What else can we say? Stray might have been, just
didn't handle the track.
Didn't handle the track.
Where did you have Fangirl settling in the run?
Let me bring up the race. I think I had it further back. Yes, I did. Did have it further back, but it began well, didn't it? It began well.
I actually, if you compare the two, this horse and No Compromise, I think that this horse showed far more intent ever to be a change of tactics than No Compromise ever did. And Hugh Bowman, look at him, just goes. He's got eyes for one spot, jams it straight out, was copying nothing but that position. And I'm not saying race over because it all had to unfold, but it probably, if you had your chance to reprice the race here, I think you would to make a few adjustments.
If I put Fangirl into where it settled, I marked it 6-1. As I said, I mentioned saving it, but if I put it where it settled, I've got it at 11-4.
Yeah, there you go. He's just a freak when he wants to turn it on, Bowman, and she's a good horse, and then the tempo again suited those up on speed, no doubt, and the rest is history. But these horses, I think, sort of going to the Oaks, you can be a little bit more kind to a few horses back in the field here because of the slow tempo. But the winner's still a very nice horse, and it doesn't look like further trips going to hurt her at all.
No.
Whereas I think Hinge has shown that probably a mile to 2,000 is her ideal distance range to be dominant.
And that was my worry going into the Rosehill race. I still actually had her on top over the 2,000, and I was sort of pleasantly pleased that the 1850 would suit it better. But it was just that last. I think it just didn't run the trip.
Sorry, 1850. Yes.
Yeah.
And like it did say the Van Dyke horse she's run quite well here, and I'm not knocking anything that's sort of been forced to come from back and wide and try and make a run, but probably the Van Dyke horse is the one most likely to improve up in distance.
But wasn't it always going to be there, John? Like it was always going to be.
Yeah. I'm not saying. I'm just sort of saying going towards an Oaks or something like that. These horses can be forgiven because it was an extremely soft tempo, and it wasn't easy. Like look where she is. She's had to work the whole way and then try and sustain a run from back there. I thought her effort was very good, even though she's been beaten a fair way.
Yeah.
Like he could turn the tables in an Oaks for me potentially.
On Fangirl, you're saying?
Well, assuming that Fangirl's the main horse, I don't know what's going to go forward, but I think the two of those will probably end up in an Oaks. I don't know he's got so many of these bloody fillies. Waller, he's got sort of an abundance of races he can choose from, doesn't he? So it's difficult to work out what they're going to do, but I would assume the winner and Gypsy Goddess go to the Oaks.
Star Kingdom, the 1200 last race. Look, they went pretty quick here in front. Mautai does what it does, and
it's a lunatic, isn't it?
Bit of a lunatic, yeah. 9 to 4 into 7 to 4, well backed and stopped very quickly. And I suppose this race was a tale of the two favourites significantly underperforming, with Gravina, the other 7 to 4 favourite.
Gravina never travelled for mine, like just never, ever travelled during the whole race, and that's a worry. But you saying like I only got a weird time with no sections on here, so they did go fast.
Well, not fast. No, they went sort of average above average. So yeah, they were running off steady enough pace. Gemsong's last preparation was very unimpressive, and yet the previous prep it raced like a decent horse. So it's
very well backed late.
Backed somewhere towards that form.
And I think it was like 60s and 70s was around, and I think it started in the teens. So I think it was very well found late.
Yeah, $30 the fare and $23 was the median price of the.
Okay, sorry, I thought it must have come in a bit more than that, but there's a couple of guys that sort of tipping it around, and it was big odds. But I think someone expected it to. Or, it could just been penning that last preparation and going back to the prep before, like you said. Maybe a few people expected. Fender was a good run first up. He keeps producing these horses quite well first up. Brett Kavanagh without public trials. Thought it went okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing you can say about the winner's last preparation is that there were a couple of excuses in two of the runs. So that may have seen it race below, but if you went back to its previous prep and you assessed it off those sorts of numbers, you could easily have it in the top 3 or 4 chances in this race.
Yeah, which probably what's worked out. But like, look at this Flying V behind it. It's a bit of a scary race.
Worry.
It is a bit of a worry, and like I said, I don't think Gravina handled anything, whether it was the ground or the backup or something, and Mautai's obviously spent his pennies well before here, so it's a bit of a charge of a light brigade race. It's had a perfect run, seen clear daylight at the right time, and sprinted for 200 metres. I'd be very wary of all that form.
Well, it was advantage when it won at Randwick there first up, Mautai, and I thought anyway, with the blinkers on that day. And then
the form out of that's not been super strong either, has it?
Well, it trialled in between, but it had that 51 days off, and it won that trial in really fast time.
Well, it went like that.
Rosehill, and ran it and won by panels, didn't it? Won by 11 lengths, but it didn't beat anything.
No.
Yeah, it started short. I mean, it was entitled to be favourite for sure.
Yeah, it was. It looked a dicey race, and I think it was probably dicier, even though they've run time.
I think
not knocking the winner. It's a good effort to win that first up, but I'd just be very wary of the race.
Splintex, did you have an opinion about it for the race? I thought it was a bit ordinary.
Yeah, and I was worried about it 1,000 to 1,200 second up, because I know that Mark always says the horses sort of improves with a run, and for me, if you're going to improve with a run from over to sort of the 1,000-metre run first up, you'd expect it to again improve with the run going to 1,200 quickly, but he certainly had his chance when you talk about like a pretty average race. He's had been in the perfect spot, slipstream. He's right there. and he's sort of at the back of I think next start's his D-Day. That's what I'm not convinced he's going that well, and I think next start's his absolute D-Day to prove himself.
Any horses to follow from you, John, out of Saturday or Monday?
All right.
Not a compulsory find. You can pick and choose.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to work out where they're going. I think that Skylab's not a silly horse to be forgiving of, especially coming back in distance. No, that's about. I think Mr. Mozart's going extremely well. They'll probably clash, I guess, in the Doncaster. Is that happening? I should have seen the field by now.
Sorry, John. Just run that by me again.
No, the Mr. Mozart, is it in the Doncaster as well?
Just checking now. Don't think so, is it? No.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, well, I think Gypsy Goddess 2A is very easy to find.
Well, Forbidden Love's come up favourite.
In the Doncaster, yeah.
Yes.
It's a scary horse for mine to be trying to chime into, but I'm sure we'll cover that on Thursday. Yeah, I think Gypsy Love and Skylab are the two horses I could probably be forgiving of going forward.
For me, I've probably only got one, and it actually comes out of the last race. I'm going to say Arcado.
It's got a bit of Shelby 66 about it, hasn't it? Like it's high up in the ratings. It's been really well graded all its time. You'd think it would be hard to place, but it'll be interesting to see what it does now that it's racing out of that country sort of championship form, isn't it?
Well, it sort of raced there. I thought it raced pretty well there on the inside part of that track later in the day, and K. O'Hara Road. So I think a switch back to
T. Berry or whoever.
T. Berry. I'm tipping it as a horse to follow, and it may well be a price too. Okay, so I think that's it from the lackluster and interrupted review from Saturday and Monday. So we can probably move on to the questions. We should talk about Top Sport, our sponsor. If you don't have an account, punters, make sure you get one. You can speak to Tristan. They always give you a fair bet. And they do bet those minimums from the moment they put the prices up. And of course, at this time of year with group racing, if you've got a Group 1 on the card, it's minimum to win 10 early, 25,000 late. And if it's a major Group 1, 20,000 early, 50,000 late. And of course, best of best options and all those things that you would expect from a fair operator. That's Top Sport.
They got the better of me last week, I think.
You made a donation.
I think so.
Okay, so let's talk about the questions this week. We didn't. It's pretty hard to find the question of the week, I think, this week.
Well, it's a bit of a slow news week, isn't it? It was very difficult with the track conditions, especially in New South Wales. There wasn't too many talking points. I think everyone's a bit beaten up by the rain and the gloopy conditions, and I can understand why there aren't too many red hot questions floating around at the moment. But yeah, we'll roll through.
We'll go through them. The first one from Russell here, he said, "Hi Paul, question for the next Punters Academy. I'm looking, or for a punter looking to frame their own markets, how should they go about it?" So I suppose from my point of view, Russell, it's all about ratings. I use ratings to construct prices from, and I use a distribution that within the market that I think gives me the outcome that I'm looking for. I tend to be more aggressive with my short priced horses. I suppose rating a race is subjective by nature. You're looking at a series of ratings for each horse, and a horse is obviously just not one number. It can hit a range of numbers. So you're looking to sort of try to find the most appropriate base run to use, and then you're making adjustments to that base run for a range of factors. A la Don Scott style. That's the way I do it. It's not the only way to do it. John, you're more of a field punter. You're pricing off intuition and your knowledge of the horse and the setup of the race and so forth. Do you want to talk us through that side of it?
Yeah, well, it's hard, like you said. There's such difference between the two. So I obviously use similar information to what you do as well, to sort of to more judge a horse and work out what it's capable of. I certainly use the same sort of data you do, but then I try and add a layer of feel to it, I guess, and that's kind of if you're starting out, I would nearly use the market as that sort of base set of ratings if you don't have a set of ratings and you're trying to work it from the start, because that's kind of what produces the early markets, I would imagine, something very similar to that, and then try and work out if you believe a price is unders or overs from that, like where the horse is going to be in the run, jockey changes. You can add layers to it to try and find holes in the market. It's a very, very broad and hard question to answer, but I would say that most gaps I find in the market are from switches from stage of preparation, track changes, distance changes, jockey changes, things that may be sort of slightly underplayed. It's a very hard question to answer, and it's how long's a piece of string? But it takes a bit of getting used to frame markets. I think it's not something you can just start overnight, is it?
No, and look, in terms of where to start from, if you're literally taking it from the beginning, and you're interested in doing it via ratings, then get yourself Don Scott's books, or there's plenty of other handicapping books that have been written, and read as many as you can, and take notes or learn different aspects from it. Develop a process, because really that's all it is a process. I mean, I don't think that the fundamentals of handicapping a race in terms of what I do now versus what I might have done 20 years ago have really changed much. No. Certainly the intelligence that's used is different, but we've got the benefit of that obviously via having the data and the database and so forth. And so all I would say to you is that read as much as you can, but become familiar with the process of doing it. If you want to follow the ratings path, if you want to follow more the path of what John does, then I think it's probably get to know your horse, get to know your area, get to know the tracks, get to know the trainers, how they ride, how they set up horses for preparations. Is that a fair comment, John? Is that?
Yeah, it is, but it still remains you need to find the truth to get the best outcome for everybody. So the best quality of information to base your assessments on too. So if you're getting right times and that sort of thing as well, it's a big advantage to knowing when you're video watching that what you're seeing is the truth and how to adjust it. It sort of carries right through to the end. So even though I'm a strong field person, the stronger the data behind what I'm looking at I know is true, helps me. So you can't do one without the other, I don't think.
Fair enough.
I can't anyway. Like I can't, as a one-man person, I couldn't add layers to it if I was trying to justify all the information along the way as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, Daniel's asked, what should the rules be for futures betting when the venues change? Now, we've had a discussion about this off air, and there's been plenty of talk this week with what's taken place. Let's hear your point of view, John.
Yeah, I just think that the one thing that needs to be defined clearly is what is an event. And if you say that you're betting on an event all in, what has to change for that to no longer be the same event? Is it the distance? Is it the venue? I completely agree if it's within 7 days at the same track and distance, all bets stand. No problem with that. My only issue is that if you bet on an event, you expect certain things, and I understand that you take risks, whether your horse gets there, barriers, jockeys, all these sorts of things. 100% I see them as calculated risks. But when you're talking about change of venues and distances, I believe that to me it's a new event, and therefore that market has to be terminated and a new one opened. And that's just my opinion. I believe it's all around the definition of an event.
So should punters be given the option to void their bets and start again?
I believe ideally, if you're not to change the rule, if your horse is in the final field, so obviously the horses that are cast by the wayside, I've got you can't demand your money back. But if your horse has found the final field, you should have at least have the option to terminate your bet.
And how would that be administered? Because I mean, okay, you can notify.
Very difficult.
You can create a rule and say, well, you have to confirm your bet. If you haven't confirmed your bet by the time official betting opens, for example,
it's a huge software issue.
Yeah, your bet's voided. I mean, it's just a minefield.
It is a minefield, and that's why I think that it has to be defined by, like, again, every bookmaker has different terms and conditions, which is just a shit fight in itself, and they can change them at will. So even if you believe that you bet into something, they can change them and do basically what they want. So it's, I think it needs to be a blanket rule. If you are to, have markets on fixed odds betting, someone has to create a set of rules, and an event has to be clearly defined what makes up an event and what it takes to change an event, which leads to the termination of that event.
Fair enough.
That's okay. It's never going to happen, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, Dave has asked, how do you determine an alarming betting drift? I watched Albury last week. A horse went from 6 to 12 in 2 minutes pre-jump. I guess it's affected by pool size, but what is an alarming drift or shortened for Metro? Is tab fixed odds the best barometer? Thanks, Dave. I think that I look at the Betfair market versus the fixed odds market and try to determine whether or not I think there's a significant premium to what's being offered on Betfair. So, for example, $5 out to $7 during the official call, and it's trading at $10 on the fair. That would be an alarm for me because it's based on a certain percentage from the price that's being traded in the actual fixed odds markets. Assuming that the Betfair price you're looking at too is actually close enough to the jump. If it's 20-30 minutes out, well then I wouldn't really put much faith in what you see there. But if it's 2 minutes out, or 1 minute out, then certainly if there's a significant premium, then that would be an alarm. And conversely, if there's a horse that's really being wanted on the fair,
targeted, yeah,
it's the horse that is going to go off in the ring next, right? So the same thing applies the other way. But there's never a lot of time to determine these things. I'm more concerned about it under certain scenarios, like if a horse is first up and it's blowing and there's no support and it's easy on the fair. Invariably those horses will run poorly or below perhaps what the initial expectation was when the markets were at a shorter price. So I think that's the way I would try to handle it myself or explain it.
Yeah, and you can only go deeper into it, like as in getting to know stables once again and working out, fresh horses, which stables handle them more. But most of the big syndicates and big players that determine prices really at the end of the day factor all that in as well. So, I think the answer is that if a horse is very soft late in betting and it's at a query stage of its preparation or coming off a query or jumping in distance, so anything that's a strong enough query and it's soft, late in betting, especially on Betfair, it's definitely an alarm. And certainly the further you get away from the city, the more vulnerable the market is. So 6 to 12 at Albury is not uncommon in the last 2 minutes. It's certainly not uncommon. It is alarming, but it's not uncommon. 6 to 12 in the city, the police would probably be on track before the end of the race. It's there'd be a lot of questions asked. That would be a big change in the last 2 minutes. But country and provincial, it's certainly far more volatile, the market.
Okay. Let's move on to a question here from Lewis. What are you looking for sectionally to suggest a horse won't or may not run a longer trip? My answer to that is that I'm looking at sectional and split ratings, not times. The times are almost useless unless you create something that you can compare across other runners, so i.e. your rating. And because the times itself also need to be compared against distance and the actual individual section itself,
and blah, blah, blah.
And they need to be adjusted, and all sorts of things come into play. But for anyone using our data, for instance, or me using my data, I'm looking at key sectional splits that I determine are important to reveal the answer to that question. I don't really want to say what they are, That's just something I want to keep up my sleeve, but it needs to say that they're there, and I'm certainly not the only one that would know about them. There's lots of people out there that would be skilled enough to know which ones are good indicators, but they are there, and I think if you actually just sit down there and think about it, you'll probably come up with the right sort of answer, or a logical answer, but that's how I go about it. What about you, John?
Yeah, this is pretty logical. It would be unlikely that you would be looking for a horse that's, had a soft run in a nice position and it's weakening or slowing down at the end of its races, going up in distance. And that's probably, you want to find a horse that's either had excuses or it's maintaining the same sort of gallop the whole way, which could say that it'll continue to do that over further, or it's quickening through the line. You don't want a horse that's had a soft run on a slow tempo and it's slowing down. That's about it.
Yeah, unless of course that horse might be first up from a long spell or something like that.
Something, unexplainable.
Yep. Yeah, but if it's not unexplainable, then yeah, I'd agree that that's a good way to isolate it. Okay, so question here from Scotty: what incremental increases do you give to a horse if you're predicting a new peak? 2.5 lengths is a figure I've seen mentioned around the place. And at what point in a horse's career do you say that's as high as it'll go, even if they've produced that number numerous times? So a couple of parts to that question, Scotty. If a horse has produced the figure numerous times, then I'm saying it can do that number. It may not do that number today, obviously, because horses aren't machines and they'll run to a range of ratings. But in the right circumstances, you may want to use that number as a reference if it's done it numerous times. I don't get too caught up in, this has had 30 starts, therefore how can it possibly go to a new peak? Yes, it's less likely, but
unless you're Shelby 66.
Well, there could be a host of reasons. I mean, look at Shelby 66, because it had however many starts it had and won, I think, it won one race or something, or 2 races prior to the point where it won 3 races, and ran very well in another.
It's won 2 in a row, isn't it? It's three great runs in a row.
Yeah, 3 great runs in a row. So I'm looking for validation in the numbers. A one-off spike doesn't make a horse likely to run to that figure again. But if a horse is able to replicate those sort of numbers multiple times, or certainly more than once, and certainly more recently, then I put more attention or weighting on them. As far as how much do I apply to a horse giving a new peak in terms of lengths, that depends on a range of factors. Where it is in its preparation, how many starts the horse has had, what's the break between racing, is it a 2-year-old now a 3-year-old, is it a 3-year-old now a 4-year-old, is it been gelded, is it changed trainers? There's a host of reasons that could make you want to bonus a horse or step it, as I would call it. What's a step? What's 2.5 lengths? I mean, it's different things over different distances, right, and different tracks. So, but there is a figure that I have that I use incrementally. I would say that if I was very bullish about a horse leaping to another level, I would say that might be something around 3.5 or 4 points on my scale.
2.5, which is, 2.5 lengths would have to be an aggressive number for anyone and near the top of their scale, regardless of who it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on what sort of scale you use, right? If you're working,
it's a big assumption to make 2.5 lengths.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I think it depends on where it is in the prep. Like if a horse has had one run back from a spell and it's second up today, and it rated, I don't know, I'm just picking numbers here. If it rated 85 on when it was first up, and last prep it went to 100, well then you could reasonably assume second up the horse might improve 2.5 lengths.
I mean a new peak. First up. I mean a new peak of 2.5. Yeah.
New peak. Well, look, I wouldn't say it's uncommon, especially in lightly raced horses. But yes, as a horse becomes more seasoned, and generally speaking, as a horse has had more runs, it's less likely to do that. It's probably also less likely that if multiple horses in the same race do it. So you can't just believe what the clock says. You've got to be able to put some context around those numbers and have the ability to measure merit on more than just times or just sectionals. it's not an easy question to answer. It's very, I suppose, a combination of, the numbers and also the art behind actually doing it yourself. And I suppose the easy way to suggest, or the easy way to do it, is if you've got a method to rate the race, and you say, okay, I'm going to give this horse a bonus of 2.5 lengths. What does that do to my price? And how does that price look or sit against what the market's betting? And if you're given 2.5 lengths improvement, and you've taken it from 4-1 to 6-4, and the market's 5-1 out to 8-1, well, you're probably wrong, even if the horse wins. So I suppose that's another way you could do it is do it. Actually get into the trial and error. Do it where you think you should, but obviously with some reserve, and compare that against actually what transpires in both the results and the betting market itself. Okay, Simbot has asked, 45k south-southwest winds predicted for this Saturday. What effect do you think it'll have on the pattern? My guess is rouse and run for the shoot races. And I think that if it transpires that way, I think you're right.
What about the last bit where it's asked if you got your own windsock? It's the only part of the question I'm actually interested in.
Do I have my own windsocks? Well, I know that that's a G up. No, I don't.
You should. You should. I think it's a great idea that you go to Racing New South Wales and you say, listen, I'll put in a rain gauge, like a cup, and a windsock if you let me put ratings to win on it in big letters like this.
Well, they could start by putting fluoros in the right place, fluoro markers at different sections. But
you could do that too and have your name on it. Do it for them. I think if you can answer his question seriously, obviously it'll affect something. But I'd be more worried about those sorts of things on race day because they change so heavily, don't they? Forecast for winds and things like that.
Well, especially at Randwick, the wind can really increase and really decrease quickly at different times of the day, and during a meeting is what I mean, not different times.
They've actually got a very good website now, haven't they?
But they do actually have a wind gauge, if you want to call it that.
Is it Australian Turf? What's the website?
It's on the Australian Turf Club website. You can find it there by going into the racing section, and you'll find it there if
I can find it quickly because it is worth.
A bit keen. But it is live, and it does give you a few different points throughout the track. So it's Australian
Racing
Turf
Information.
Club, Australian Turf Club, and
here
there
it is.
You got it there, Racing Information.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get it to work. It is actually a good tool for anyone that's trying to find stuff on race day. So here we go.
Track wind indicator.
So that's currently at Randwick, is it?
Correct. Yeah, that's currently Randwick.
And that obviously updates live changes. So it is a good tool, shows the different starts and the direction and strength. And obviously that's mainly due to wind breaks from grandstands.
A whole bunch of things. Buildings, grandstands, trees, etc.
Different every direction, but a really good tool. And that's australianturfclub.com.au, track and weather condition. It's under racing and then racing information.
Yep. Okay, question of the week in a question or a week of questions where it was difficult to isolate one. And
that's not the right one.
That's not the right one.
That? I must have put the wrong slide in there. We'll blame it. We'll just read it. But he's won it anyway.
So Nigel,
question of the week.
Sorry?
Top sport question of the week.
Indeed. So it comes from Nigel, and Nigel has used his observational powers to make some deductions about two races. The first one's the Albury Cup race, which officially was run in 1:58.38. That time isn't correct, I can tell you that, but it was slower than that, but still very fast. And his question is this the fastest time a horse has ever run over 2,000 metres in Australia? Most track records I recall for 2,000 metres are around 2 minutes. So that's the first part of his question. And I can tell you that you're right. You're bang on. It is. Going back to, I think it's about 2002 is when my data goes back to. It is the quickest 2,000 metre race run in Australia, which is amazing when you think about it, given that it was Albury. and it didn't necessarily look to the eye that they were going that hard, but I can tell you that it was fast. So spot on there in your observation. And the second part of your question was the first 600 of William Reid was running 33.65. Well, that's official. It's also wrong, but I can tell you it was fast. Seems especially quick. Has a race at Moonee Valley ever gone quicker for the first 600 metres? Well, on official times, once again, in the context of the data I have in my database, there was a race on the 16th of February in 2008. So on official times, it was faster than the William Reid. I don't have a verified time for that, so I can't say yes or no. If that official time was wrong, and it's not the case, then yes, you're right. Again, the William Reid was the fastest for the first 600, once again, over that same data period. So great observation. And look, these are things that any punter can learn just through observation and experience, and they're important things to know because they can help you understand the performance of horses that coming out of races and why they did certain things or why they didn't do certain things. Because we saw September Run get back to its best form. Essentially, it hasn't run for God. It feels like it's about.
I think it was 520 odd days.
A year and a half, 2 years. It feels like. And once again, they ran fast time. Could they have run faster given the benefit of the pace they had? Some would argue yes, and therefore, maybe September Run's performance in that race wasn't as good as recent form. I still think the race rated pretty well on my figures, and I'm sure that my numbers will be different to what others might have in that regard. But great observations, Nigel, and it just shows you what you can learn or what you can pick up just through a thorough study of racing. So that's it for the week, John. It's a bit of a different format this week, I suppose, given the the mix-up with the racing that happened over the weekend. We've got a preview show, rapid fire show, which will be tomorrow, which will feature the Group 1 and Group 2 action from the weekend. Big week of racing. Sorry, I just got to get rid of that. And someone just giving me a call there. Okay.
Hopefully we just don't get this rain that's predicted, and we get a safe and normal track on Saturday to at least work with. Yeah. Because if it keeps arriving, holy heck, they've got to be in trouble again. But hopefully, touch wood, it's
hopefully they won't be. Hopefully it'll go ahead, and it'll be plenty to digest and analyse in the lead up to Saturday, and certainly it'll make it a bit tricky finding winners this week. But we'll do our best again. Hope you've enjoyed this week's show, and we'll catch you on Thursday, tomorrow, and also next week for a review of the weekend.
Can't believe it's Wednesday already. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.